It's strange. People come to me because I'm perceived as being successful, and yet so much of what I say is that really being successful and being rich and isn't really what it's about.
Yeah.
I have the greatest respect for people who are like Bill Malcolm, for example. You know,
Yeah. Oh, I haven't met him. No.
he's a fantastic guy. He's a pastor in our church, and I know him quite well. And
Oh, maybe I have. Yeah. Maybe I just know him.
he
Don't know him by now.
comes around and says hello.
Yeah.
Bill's never going to be a rich man, but he's just one of the best people you could imagine. I went to Lee and I were invited to his birthday party, and his wife organised for everybody there to say what they thought of Bill, and it was just everybody had this just full of love for this amazing guy. What he achieved.
Yeah.
Not rich, never will be rich. He's never going to be famous. I mean, he's well known within the church, obviously, but he's just an amazing guy. To me, Bill's an amazingly successful guy. And if I look at somebody who's become a billionaire, but who's, you know, just cynical and just piling up more money, I don't see them as being successful.
Yeah. I would agree, because you can't take it with you ultimately. So,
It's not even much good for life.
yeah.
You don't make yourself happy by just simply, I've got a reason to make money. I love what I do, and what I do is meaningful, but it can't be your purpose. It shouldn't be your purpose. It's just empty, meaningless.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yes. It's not just about being your own salesman, it's how you sell. I was trying to sell lawn mowing rounds and doing a very bad job of it. Really bad. I was hopeless at it. I just couldn't handle it. I even before a professional salesman at one time to help me sell these lawn mowing rounds. Just couldn't do it. And I went to see somebody in my church who was in an advertising agency and very successful. Much, much more successful than me at that stage. I was just basically a gardening contractor with a bit of ideas about it. And he invited me into his office and sat me down, and for half an hour he told me about his business. He told me about marketing. He told me, not his business, he told me about marketing. He told me about how you find clients, where you can advertise, what message you go, all kind of stuff too. And the end of it, he said to me, Jim, you don't really need an advertising agency at this time. Just go and do that. And I walked out of the office, and I knew that if I ever needed to employ a marketing agent, I would go straight back to him. And the really interesting thing was he hadn't told me about anything about his business. In fact, I did some years later when we launched the franchise, I wanted to go on TV. I did go straight to him. He'd never told me anything about his business. I didn't know what they charged. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know anything. And yet I knew, even though he hadn't tried to sell me on his business, he had completely sold me on his business. And the way he'd done it is by showing that his only concern was my welfare and the welfare of my business. So I switched around from that time. I tried a different approach. Instead of talking about selling my business, I started to help people. I would ask somebody, do you know what the cut of a lawn mowing round is for just one job, each job done once? And then I just talked about the business and how you find clients and what you charge and what machinery you use and, you know, marketing and all kinds of things. I would just explain to them how it used to work. And at the end of it, I just give them I've got some customers in your area. If you're interested, that's it. That was my sales. But I wasn't selling at all. And as soon as I started doing that, I started to be incredibly successful at selling. Because I even used to have a little brochure. Eventually, it was just a little tiny thing with stapled at the corner. How to buy or build your own lawn mowing business. I didn't tell them how to build their own. Without even using me. And then when they bought, I just looked after them as best I could. I gave them advice, you know, just everything I could to help them be successful. It was pre-franchise. So that was the lesson. And as soon as I started not worrying about myself and started worrying about them, we have a word for it in gyms. We call it selling by not selling.
Yeah.
And the same thing approaches when you're selling a franchise. You're not actually selling a franchise. You're actually trying to work out whether it's the best decision for that particular person. It's pretty good. Okay, first of all, if you tell a person to do something, I use lawn mowing as an example because that's how it. There's a certain way to mow a lawn professionally, and the way it is, you go around the outside and you mow straight lines. There's a hose on the lawn. It's usually in an area where there's not much grass or just a few leaves, but You take it, you coil it neatly on the garden, and then you mow to the edge. Okay, there's things like that. Now, when a person goes out, they may start off by mowing it the wrong way, doing it the wrong way. The trainer will tell them, you need to do it this way. Now, they can be told once, maybe twice. After that, if they don't listen, you fail them because they're not listening.
Yep.
They're not taking advice. They're not going to listen to what you say. They're too keen on the idea to do it their way, and that's good enough. And I don't, and you fail them. The guy turns up. The trainer is ready to go out. All the stuff loaded. 8 o'clock. The guy comes in late. Does not apologise. That's a very bad sign. That's another example.
Yep.
Anything, train doesn't finish the day. Said, I've seen enough. Goes off. Yeah, fail.
Yeah.
So you've got to have somebody who's willing to listen, who cares about doing things the right way. You've got to follow a system.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a philosophy as an individual and in business that I actually don't regard going too far as being over-servicing. And I know that in corporate world that can be looked down upon, but I think to myself, the thinking beyond the current transaction to make sure that the customer feels valued, that's really important. And I'm kind of starting to actually think that it's an old school attitude.
No. I actually, this was when I was doing interstate trips around the place.
Yeah.
No, I used to invite them to come forward and say a word, to speak. No, not at all. I didn't know they were there. Actually, because I charged $20 for the meeting, so I actually used that part to get part of my costs.
Okay, fair enough. No, if it works.
Yeah, actually, and the couple came up to speak to me afterwards too. We're very friendly. I never diss the competition. Not externally. Internally, we tend to be a little bit more critical of things we hear about, but never to an outsider. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Well,
I know there used to be a competitor of ours in the very early days who would spend they had these Saturday night sessions and they had spent the time criticising gyms. And I always knew when it was on because on Monday morning we get all these inquiries for franchises. They're their best recruiting tools.
Yeah, well, I mean, in every interaction is a sale in some sense. You're either selling yourself or they're selling you, and if you're dissing somebody enough, that actually means that there's something about it that's worth actually having a look into, at least be informed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have a saying actually when I talk to people in notice. I said, look, VIP is a good company. Go and, investigate them for sure. But here's a list of my franchisees with their phone numbers. Go and ask for their list. That's the only thing I did that was a bit dishonest because I knew they wouldn't provide the list. They wouldn't.
Okay.
Because they were smart enough to know they weren't going to get a good enough result. That's what did it. But never said anything bad. And I always recommend people to go and check out the competition too.
I think that is very interesting. I don't think many other people would do that. But I also think that what you've talked about there in terms of checking things out, that was, and also in terms of this right fit thing, that's you and I have talked about recently. My biggest error this year was in terms of somebody who I asked to do a job, and because of their association and also the introduction to me, I just assumed that their competency was going to be such that they'd be able to deliver upon what they said. And so I think one of the biggest things I've learnt this year is about due diligence, and that seems to be a huge part of the gyms group.
Yes. Yeah, well...
When you've also had that same experience, you talk about in the early days you gave somebody, I think it was $5,000 or $6,000 to do something or other, and they vanished. And it was probably one of the worst points in your professional life.
That was the person who sold some lawnmower mounts for me. But that was my stupidity, yeah. You got, you're lazy, people rip you off. I'm to blame. I mean, it's not good what they did, but focusing on what I did wrong. And I know. Yes, some dumb attitudes at times. Sometimes it's easy to become very arrogant and just think you're good. Sometimes you've got to recognise that you're not.
Yeah.
I think humility is one of the most underrated virtues in business. Because the people who succeed best in my experience, and this is maybe something to do with the service industry, but the people that I most admire are actually great learners. They're quite humble. People like Haider Hussain, who runs the clean division, he's a wonderful human being, very, very self-effacing, very humble sort of guy, or many others too. They talk about what they've done. You would not know these guys were brilliant, in a lot of ways more successful than me, not better than me at so many different things, but they're very, maybe it's something to do with our industry. Or our culture.
So these are your sounding board?
Yeah, we talk all the time. I learn from them, they learn from me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And that's one of the things I sort of got, is you've also got a phrase in there, I can't remember where I've written it, about the loyal, I think it's
loyal opposition.
Yeah, the loyal opposition. I thought that's really interesting, because most places I've been do not like somebody putting up their hand and saying, we've got some problems here. What are we going to do about it? But you welcome it, from what I understand.
Yes, yeah. You can't be. You can't just have me an echo chamber. You've got to have people who are prepared to say that you made a mistake. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
Okay,
hope that's useful for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your time.